Commander Vex Thrall stood at the docking bay window and watched the human vessel grow larger. The ship was called the Endurance, a name that meant nothing to him. It was a medium-class cruiser, standard design, nothing special. He had seen 1,000 ships like it during his long career. His 4 amber eyes moved slowly across the hull. He noted the weapon placements, the shield generators, the engine configuration. Everything was adequate. Nothing was impressive. This was the ship he would call home for the next 6 months. The thought made his mandibles click with irritation. Vex Thrall was a decorated commander of the Corvani Empire. He had fought in 37 planetary campaigns across 4 decades of service. His exoskeletal hide, a deep green color that had faded to gray in places, bore the scars of 100 engagements. He had led armies. He had conquered worlds. He had watched civilizations fall before the might of the Corvani fleet, and now the Galactic Coalition had assigned him to babysit humans. The Coalition was a new organization, formed just 3 years ago to unite the spacefaring species against common threats. The Corvani had joined reluctantly. They did not need allies. They had never needed allies. But the political situation demanded cooperation. And so here Vex Thrall stood, waiting to board a human ship as a military liaison. Humans, the youngest species in the Coalition. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only 40 years ago. In the grand scale of galactic history, they were infants. Vex Thrall had been fighting wars before their great-grandparents were born. The docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk. Vex Thrall gathered his belongings, a small bag containing personal items and his ceremonial blade, and walked toward the airlock. His heavy footsteps echoed in the empty corridor. At 7 feet tall and covered in natural armor, he was an imposing figure. Most species found his appearance frightening. He wondered if the humans would be afraid. The airlock opened, and Vex Thrall stepped onto the Endurance for the first time. The air smelled different than Corvani ships. Warmer. There was an odd scent he could not identify. Something almost pleasant. 3 humans waited for him in the corridor. The one in front stepped forward with his hand extended. He was of average height for a human male, with short brown hair and a friendly expression. He wore the uniform of a ship captain, 4 bars on his collar, indicating his rank. "Commander Vex Thrall," the human said. "Welcome aboard. I am Captain Jake Morrison. We are honored to have you with us." Vex Thrall looked at the extended hand. He knew this was a human greeting ritual, a way of showing peaceful intent. He reached out with his own clawed hand and grasped the captain's palm. Morrison did not flinch at the contact, even though Vex Thrall's grip could crush bone. "Captain," Vex Thrall said. His voice was deep and rough, filtered through translation implants that converted his native language to human speech. "I am here as ordered by Coalition Command." Morrison smiled. "And we are glad to have you. Let me introduce my senior officers." He gestured to the woman on his left. She was tall for a human female, with red hair pulled back in a tight style, and sharp green eyes. Her uniform marked her as a tactical officer. "This is Lieutenant Katie Briggs," Morrison said. "She handles weapons and combat operations." Briggs nodded. "Commander." "Lieutenant." Morrison then indicated the man on his right. He was shorter and stockier, with dark skin and a relaxed posture that suggested someone comfortable with himself. His uniform showed engineering insignia. "And this is Chief Engineer Ben Torres. He keeps us flying." Torres grinned. "Welcome aboard, Commander. Hope you do not mind a few bumps now and then. She is a good ship, but she has her moods." Vex Thrall did not understand the joke. Corvani did not joke about their vessels. A ship was a weapon, not a pet. "I require quarters," Vex Thrall said, "and access to your mission briefings. I will observe your operations and report to Coalition Command." If Morrison was offended by the blunt tone, he did not show it. "Of course. Lieutenant Briggs will show you to your quarters. We have modified a cabin to accommodate your needs. Dinner is at 1800 hours in the officers' mess. You are welcome to join us." Vex Thrall considered declining. He had no interest in socializing with these creatures, but refusing might be seen as an insult, and the Coalition demanded cooperation. "I will attend," he said. Briggs led him through the ship's corridors. Vex Thrall observed everything with a critical eye. The humans moved around him with curious glances but no fear. Some even nodded in greeting as they passed. This surprised him. Most species avoided Corvani when possible. "Here we are," Briggs said, stopping at a door. "We adjusted the bed and the bathroom for your size. The temperature controls are on the wall panel. Let me know if you need anything changed." Vex Thrall entered the cabin. It was small but functional. The bed had been replaced with a larger frame, and the ceiling had been raised to accommodate his height. Someone had put effort into making him comfortable. "This is acceptable," he said. Briggs nodded. "Good. I will come get you for dinner." She paused at the door. "Commander, I know this assignment might not be what you wanted. A warrior like you, stuck on a patrol ship with a bunch of humans, but we are glad you are here. Maybe you will find we are more interesting than you expect." She left before he could respond. Vex Thrall stood alone in his new quarters and thought about her words. Interesting. What could possibly be interesting about humans? They were soft. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no venoms. Their senses were mediocre at best. They could not see in the dark, could not smell danger, could not hear ultrasonic frequencies. By every measure that mattered to a warrior, humans were weak. He unpacked his bag and placed his ceremonial blade on the small desk. The blade had been with him through every campaign. It had taken the lives of enemies on a dozen worlds. It was his most prized possession. Vex Thrall sat on the edge of the bed and reviewed the Endurance's mission profile on his datapad. Patrol duty along the Coalition border. Escort assignments for merchant convoys. Occasional contact with pirates and smugglers. Simple work, easy work. Nothing that would challenge a veteran like himself. He thought about the 37 campaigns he had survived. The battles that had earned him medals and recognition. The soldiers who had died under his command. War was serious business. War demanded discipline, training, and sacrifice. The Corvani understood this better than anyone. What did humans know of war? Their species was barely a generation old by galactic standards. They had never faced an existential threat. They had never fought for their survival as a people. Vex Thrall made a decision. He would complete this assignment. He would observe the humans and write his reports. He would do his duty to the Coalition, but he would not pretend these creatures were his equals. They were children playing at being soldiers. Nothing more. 6 months. He could endure 6 months. At dinner, he sat at the end of the table and listened to the humans talk. They spoke of families back home, of sports and entertainment, of small concerns that seemed trivial to him. Captain Morrison asked about Corvani culture, and Vex Thrall answered with short, clipped responses. The food was strange but edible. The company was tolerable. The humans seemed determined to make him feel welcome, which only annoyed him more. He went to bed that night convinced that this assignment would be the most boring experience of his long career. He had no idea how wrong he was. The first week passed without incident. Vex Thrall attended briefings, observed drills, and wrote his reports. The humans went about their duties with quiet efficiency. He had to admit, grudgingly, that they were competent. Their procedures were solid. Their discipline was acceptable, but he saw nothing special. Nothing that justified their place in the Coalition. On the 8th day, everything changed. The Endurance was escorting a merchant convoy through a region known for pirate activity. Vex Thrall sat in the observer seat on the bridge, watching the tactical display with mild interest. Captain Morrison was in his command chair. Lieutenant Briggs worked the weapons console. Everything was routine. Then the alarm started screaming. "Contact," Briggs announced, her voice sharp and focused. Multiple signatures dropping out of hyperspace. 4 vessels, coming in fast. The main screen flickered, and Vex Thrall saw them. 4 ships emerging from behind a shattered moon. Weapons already glowing hot. He recognized the design immediately. Sketh marauders. Brutal pirates who attacked merchant convoys and left no survivors. His claws tightened on the armrests. This was bad. The Endurance was a capable ship, but 4 Sketh raiders was too many. The math was simple. They were outgunned. "Sir," Briggs said, "they are moving to surround us." Flanking pattern. Vex Thrall waited for the obvious order. Any sensible commander would signal a retreat. Fall back to coalition space. Call for reinforcements. The convoy would be lost. But the ship would survive. It was standard doctrine. Captain Morrison leaned forward in his chair. His expression had changed. The friendly, relaxed man Vex Thrall had met at the airlock was gone. In his place was something harder. Something colder. "All hands, battle stations," Morrison said. "Katie, target the lead ship. Aim for their engine core." Vex Thrall blinked all four eyes. "Captain, you cannot be serious." Morrison glanced at him. "Commander, there are 4 of them. We should retreat and call for support." The captain shook his head. "They will catch the convoy before help arrives. We have to hold them here." "But the odds." "Ben," Morrison interrupted, speaking into the comm. "I need everything you can give me. Push the engines past safety limits if you have to." Torres's voice came back immediately. "You got it, Captain. She will hold." Briggs turned from her console. "Firing solution ready, Captain." "Awaiting your order." Morrison's eyes never left the screen. "Fire." The Endurance surged forward, not backward, not away from danger, but directly toward the enemy. The first shot lanced out and struck the lead Sketh ship square in its engine section. The explosion was bright and beautiful. Vex Thrall gripped his seat as the ship twisted hard to port. Plasma fire streaked past the viewport, close enough to leave after-images in his vision. The Sketh were firing back now, all 3 remaining ships focusing on the Endurance. "Shields at 80%, someone called out. "Return fire," Morrison ordered. "Katie, secondary target." Briggs worked her console with practiced speed. Another shot, another hit. The second Sketh ship lost its main weapon array and began to drift. But now the pirates were adapting. They spread out, attacking from multiple angles. The Endurance could not dodge everything. A blast struck the hull, and the ship shuddered. "Shield at 60%. Hull breach on deck 7. "Seal it," Morrison said. "Keep firing." Vex's Thrall watched in disbelief. The humans were not retreating. They were not even considering retreat. They were pushing forward, attacking, taking damage, and giving back twice as much. This was insane. This was reckless. This was not how you fought a battle. Another hit rocked the ship. Sparks flew from a console near Vex Thrall, and a crew member fell. A medic appeared from somewhere and dragged the wounded human away. No one stopped working. No one panicked. "Shields at 40%, Briggs reported. 2 enemies, still active. "Then we only have 2 left to kill," Morrison replied. The captain was smiling. Not a happy smile, but a fierce one. The expression of a predator that had found its prey. The Endurance spun and dove, executing maneuvers that should have been impossible for a ship its size. Torres was pushing the engines beyond their design limits, and somehow they were holding. The 2 remaining Sketh ships tried to regroup, but Morrison did not give them the chance. "Full power to forward weapons," he ordered. One final push. The Endurance accelerated directly at the nearest enemy. For a moment, Vex Thrall thought they were going to ram it. Then, at the last second, Briggs fired everything they had. The Sketh ship exploded in a ball of flame that the Endurance flew straight through. The last raider turned and ran. It jumped to hyperspace and vanished, leaving debris and silence behind. Morrison let out a long breath. Damage report. Hull breaches on decks 7 and 12. Shields offline. 3 wounded, none critical. Engine efficiency down to 60%. Briggs paused. "We won, Captain." A cheer went up from the bridge crew. Humans clapped each other on the backs, laughed, and grinned like they had just won a prize. Morrison stood and stretched like he had finished a workout, not a battle. Vex Thrall sat in his chair, unable to move. His mind was still processing what he had witnessed. The humans had charged a superior force. They had taken damage that would have triggered a Corvani retreat order. They had kept fighting when any rational species would have fled. And they had won. Later, After the immediate repairs were underway, Vex Thrall found Lieutenant Briggs in a corridor. She had a bandage wrapped around her arm where shrapnel had cut her during the battle. She was laughing with another officer about something, as if she had not nearly died an hour ago. "Lieutenant," he said. "A word." Briggs nodded to her colleague and turned to face him. "What can I do for you, Commander?" "That battle. What you did. It was reckless." "Ah." She tilted her head. "How so?" "You were outnumbered, outgunned. The logical action was to withdraw and preserve your ship." Briggs shrugged. "The convoy could not run. If we left, those pirates would have killed everyone on those merchant ships. Hundreds of people. Better hundreds than your entire crew." "Is it?" She seemed genuinely curious. "We were willing to take the risk. That is our job." Vex Thrall struggled to find the words. "In the Corvani military, we have doctrine. Rules. When projected casualties exceed 40%, withdrawal is mandatory. You must have exceeded that threshold." "Probably." Briggs agreed. "We do not really calculate like that during a fight. We just focus on winning." "Too. But you could have died. All of you." She smiled, and there was something in that smile that Vex Thrall could not identify. "Commander, with all due respect, that was a pretty standard engagement for us. We have seen worse. A lot worse." He stared at her. "Worse? That was not even a bad Tuesday," she said. "You want to see bad? You should check our history. We humans have been doing this to each other for thousands of years." She patted his arm, a casual gesture that would have been unthinkable on a Corvani ship, and walked away. Vex Thrall stood alone in the corridor for a long time. His certainties, the things he had believed about strength and weakness and war, had begun to crack. These humans, these soft, fragile creatures with no natural weapons, what were they? Vex Thrall could not sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the battle again. The Endurance charging forward, the plasma fire, the explosions, and the humans, laughing and cheering afterward, like it was all a game. What had Briggs meant when she said they had seen worse? The next morning, he requested access to human military archives. Captain Morrison approved it immediately, without even asking why. That bothered Vex's Thrall too. A Corvani commander would have questioned such a request. Morrison just shrugged and gave him full access. Lieutenant Briggs found him in the ship's small library, staring at a data terminal. "The captain said you wanted to learn about human history," she said. "Mind if I help? Some of it needs context." Vex Thrall gestured to the chair beside him. "Sit. Show me your wars." Briggs sat down and pulled up the interface. "Where do you want to start?" "The beginning." She thought for a moment. "Let us start with something from about 130 years ago. We call it World War I. The screen filled with images and video. Vex Thrall leaned forward, his four eyes taking in every detail. He saw humans in primitive uniforms marching across muddy fields. He saw trenches stretching to the horizon, lines of dirt and wood that went on for hundreds of miles. He saw soldiers climbing out of those trenches and running toward enemy positions, running into automated weapons fire. "What is this?" he asked. "The Battle of the Somme," Briggs said quietly. "One of the worst days in our military history. On the first day alone, we lost nearly 20,000 dead, 40,000 more wounded." Vex Thrall's mandibles went still. 20,000. In one day. Yes. And they kept fighting? For 4 more months. By the end, both sides had lost over 1 million soldiers. He could not process the number. 1 million soldiers. The entire Corvani military was smaller than that. A single battle had consumed more lives than his species had lost, in its last 5 wars combined. "Show me more," he said. Briggs showed him more. She showed him chemical weapons, clouds of poison that made soldiers choke and die in agony. She showed him tanks rolling over trenches, crushing everything in their path. She showed him field hospitals where doctors worked without rest, trying to save men who were already dying. "This war lasted 4 years," Briggs said. When it ended, we thought it was the worst thing that could ever happen. We called it the war to end all wars. Did it? No. She pulled up new files. 20 years later, we did it again. We call it World War II. The images were clearer now, the technology better. Vex Thrall saw cities burning. He saw armies clashing across entire continents. He saw footage of something called D-Day, where thousands of human soldiers charged onto a beach under enemy fire. How many died in this war? He asked. 60 million. His claws dug into the desk surface, leaving marks. 60 million. Your entire species was at war? Most of it, yes. Fighting on every continent except one. In the air, on the sea, on the land. Everywhere. She showed him the Holocaust. And Vex Thrall had to look away. Not from weakness, but from something he did not recognize. Disgust. Perhaps. Or horror. You did this to each other, he said. Your own species. Yes. Why? Briggs was quiet for a moment. Because we could. Because we were afraid. Because we were angry. Because we thought we were right. She shook her head. There is never just one reason. Close. Then she showed him the mushroom cloud. The image filled the screen. A city called Hiroshima. One moment, a living place full of people. The next moment, gone. Vaporized. Replaced by a cloud of fire and death that rose into the sky like a monument to destruction. You used atomic weapons, Vex Thrall said. His voice had gone flat. On yourselves. Twice. 2 cities. About 200,000 dead. To end the war? Yes. We built the most powerful weapon in our history, and we used it on our own kind. Briggs met his eyes. And then we kept building more. Vex Thrall had seen nuclear weapons before. The Corvani had them. Every spacefaring species did. But he had never heard of a race using such weapons on their own planet, and continuing to exist afterward. How are you still here? He asked. After all of this, how did your species survive? We almost did not, Briggs admitted. For about 50 years after that, we pointed enough nuclear weapons at each other to destroy the world several times over. We came close to ending everything more than once, but you did not. No. We did not. She showed him more wars. Korea. Vietnam. Conflicts in places with names like Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria. Wars that lasted decades. Wars fought in cities. Building to building. Room to room. Wars where the enemy was invisible and everywhere. Our longest war lasted about 20 years, she said. We lost thousands of soldiers, spent trillions of our currency, changed our society forever. Vex Thrall processed this information slowly. The Corvani have fought many wars. Our longest lasted 3 years. We considered it a catastrophe. Longest. What were your casualties? 40,000 dead. It took us a generation to recover. Briggs nodded. She did not say anything. She did not need to. You lost more than that, Vex Thrall said slowly. In single battles. Sometimes in single days. Yes. And you kept fighting. Always. She closed the files and turned to face him fully. Commander. Humans have been at war with each other since before we could write. We have invented thousands of ways to kill each other. We have committed horrors that still haunt us. But we have never stopped. We have never given up. Vex Thrall sat back in his chair. His mind was reeling. Everything he had believed about humans, every assumption he had made about their weakness, was crumbling. When the Corvani lose a battle, he said, we retreat. We regroup. We calculate acceptable losses and adjust our strategy accordingly. This is wisdom. This is how a civilized species wages war. Briggs smiled, but there was no humor in it. Humans do not really do acceptable losses. We just have losses. And then we keep going. But why? Why would you continue when the cost is so high? Because giving up costs more, She leaned forward. Commander, we are not stupid. We know what we are. We know what we have done. Every human alive carries the weight of our history. But that history also taught us something important. What? That we can endure anything, any horror, any loss, any catastrophe. We have proven it over and over again. No matter what happens, some of us will survive. And those survivors will rebuild. They will remember. And they will keep going. Vex Thrall was silent for a long time. In 37 campaigns, he had never felt this way. He had faced enemies that were stronger, faster, better armed. He had fought battles that seemed hopeless. But he had never faced an enemy like humanity. An enemy that simply refused to stop. Lieutenant, he said finally, I owe you an apology. Briggs raised an eyebrow. For what? I came aboard this ship believing your species was weak. Believing you were children playing at war. He shook his head slowly. I was wrong. Completely wrong. She reached out and touched his arm. Do not feel bad about it, Commander. Everyone makes that mistake the first time. The first time? You are not the first veteran to serve with us. And you will not be the last. She stood up. Come on. I think you need a drink. And I know just the place. She led him to the crew lounge, where humans gathered to relax. They looked at him with curiosity but no fear. For the first time, Vex Thrall understood why. They were not afraid because they had faced worse than him. Much, much worse. And they were still here. That night, Vex Thrall could not enter his rest cycle. He lay on his bunk and stared at the ceiling, his mind turning the same thoughts over and over. 60 million dead in a single war. Nuclear weapons used on their own cities. Centuries of conflict that never truly ended. And yet humanity was here. Not just surviving, but thriving. Building ships. Exploring space. Joining the coalition as equals. How? He got up and walked the corridors of the Endurance. The night shift was quiet. A few crew members nodded to him as they passed. He barely noticed them. His feet carried him to the engine room without conscious thought. The massive machines hummed with power, a sound that should have been comforting. Instead, it reminded him of how small he felt. Chief Engineer Ben Torres was there, elbow deep in a repair panel. Grease covered his face and hands. He was humming a song Vex Thrall did not recognize. Commander, Torres said, looking up. Could not sleep? No. Torres wiped his hands on a rag and leaned against the wall. Want to talk about it? Vex Thrall hesitated. Corvani did not share their thoughts with strangers. They did not show weakness or uncertainty. But something in the human's easy manner made him want to speak. Your people, he began, then stopped. He did not know how to phrase the question. Torres waited patiently. How do you continue? Vex Thrall finally asked. After so much death, so much destruction, so much pain. How does your species still function? The engineer considered the question seriously. He was not offended or defensive. He seemed to understand that Vex Thrall was genuinely struggling. I guess we do not really think about it that way, Torres said. Every generation figures they have it rough, and they are usually right. But we keep going. We always keep going. But the weight of it, the history, how do you carry it? Torres shrugged. We carry it together. My grandfather fought in a war. My father served in a different one. I chose to work on ships instead of carrying a weapon. But I am still part of the same tradition. Does it not break you, knowing what your species has done? Sometimes. The engineer was honest. Sometimes you read about something in history and you just feel sick. But then you look around at what we have built since then. The hospitals, the schools, the ships that fly between stars. We built all of that too. Vex Thrall shook his head. The Corvani approach to war is different. We calculate everything. Casualties are minimized because the Empire cannot afford to lose soldiers. Wars are fought with an eye toward acceptable losses. When losses exceed projections, retreat is mandatory. That sounds very practical. It is survival. Our species is smaller than yours. We cannot afford waste. Torres nodded slowly. I can understand that. But here is the thing about humans. We are not practical about war. We never have been. I have noticed. The engineer laughed. I bet you have. But there is a reason for it. We do not fight to preserve numbers. We fight for things we believe in. Ideas. Freedom. Family. Home. And when you fight for something you believe in, you do not stop just because the math says you should. Vex Thrall thought about this. The concept was alien to him. War, in Corvani thinking, was a tool. You used it to achieve objectives. When the cost exceeded the benefit, you stopped, but humans did not seem to see it that way. What happens when you lose? He asked. When a war goes badly and you cannot win? We lose sometimes, Torres admitted. We have lost plenty of times. But even when we lose, we keep going. We rebuild. We have kids. We plant trees we will never see grow tall. Why? Because that is what we do. That is what we have always done. Torres looked at him with something like sympathy. Commander, I know this is hard to understand. Your species has its way of doing things, and it works for you. But our way is different. We are stubborn and stupid, and we refuse to give up, even when we should. That sounds like a weakness. Sometimes it is. But sometimes, it is the only reason we survived. Vex Thrall was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the battles he had fought. The times he had ordered retreats. The soldiers who had lived because he followed doctrine. Had he ever fought for something he believed in? Had he ever refused to stop, no matter the cost? He was not sure. Your species, he said slowly, is terrifying. Torres laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. We get that a lot. The next morning, Vex Thrall found Captain Morrison in the ship's gym. The human was running on a machine, sweat soaking his shirt. He slowed when he saw the Corvani commander. Commander. Care to join me? Care to join me? I do not use such equipment. Suit yourself. Morrison kept walking at a slower pace. Torres said you came by the engine room last night. Said you had some questions. I did. Find any answers? Vex Thrall considered his response carefully. I found more questions. Morrison smiled. That is usually how it works with us. We are confusing. Yes, you are. The captain stepped off the machine and grabbed a towel. Can I ask you something, Commander? Can I ask you something, Commander? Proceed. In all your years of service, all those campaigns, did you ever fight a battle you knew you could not win? Vex Thrall thought back. No, Corvani doctrine does not permit such engagements. Never once? If victory is impossible, retreat is mandatory. Suicide missions are forbidden. Morrison nodded slowly. See, that is the difference. Humans do that all the time. We throw ourselves at impossible odds because sometimes impossible is the only choice we have. That is illogical. Maybe. The captain looked at him with those strange, soft eyes that somehow held so much steel. But here is a question for you. In all of galactic history, how many species have gone extinct because they chose the logical option? Vex Thrall had no answer. Humans are still here, Morrison continued. Because sometimes we choose to fight when we should not. We stand when we should run. We die so others can live. It is not logical. It is not efficient. But it is who we are. The captain walked past him toward the door, then paused. Commander, I have read your service record. 37 campaigns. Medals. Commendations. You are a warrior. A real one. He met Vex Thrall's eyes. But I think maybe you have been fighting the wrong way your whole life. Fighting to survive instead of fighting to win. He left before Vex's Thrall could respond. The Corvani commander stood alone in the empty gym. The silence pressed against him like a weight. Fighting to survive instead of fighting to win. The words echoed in his mind. He had always believed that survival was the point. That preserving your forces, minimizing losses, protecting what you had, that was wisdom. That was how civilized species waged war. But the humans did not care about preserving themselves. They cared about winning, about protecting others, about standing for something greater than survival. And they had conquered a galaxy because of it. Vex Thrall walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Corvani Empire followed its careful doctrines and fought its measured wars. They would survive. They always survived. But they would never be great. Not like this. Not like humanity. He made a decision. When his assignment ended, he would not simply file his reports and return to his old life. He would do something different. He would learn. He would learn how to fight like a human. How to stand when logic said run. How to believe in something more than survival. Because for the first time in his long life, Vex Thrall understood what true strength looked like, and it terrified him. 3 months passed. Vex Thrall grew to know the crew of the Endurance. He learned their names, their habits, their stories. He shared meals with them. He listened when they talked about their families back home. He began to understand them in ways he had never expected. Then the call came. A harvester swarm had emerged from dark space. The mechanical plague that consumed entire worlds, stripping them of all resources and leaving only dead rock behind. They had been dormant for centuries. Now they were awake, and they were heading for the inner systems. The Coalition fleet gathered at a place called Junction Point, a strategic location where they could intercept the harvesters before they reached populated worlds. Vex Thrall transferred to the Corvani flagship to join the War Council. He stood among his own kind for the first time in months. It felt strange, wrong, somehow. The Corvani admiral was named Thexnar. He was older than Vex Thrall, decorated, respected. He studied the tactical display with his 4 eyes narrowed. "The projections are bad," Thexnar said. "The harvesters outnumber us significantly. Our models suggest we will lose 70% of our forces." "What is the doctrine?" another commander asked. "Retreat at 40% projected losses." Thexnar's voice was heavy. "We should withdraw. Call for reinforcements. Find another place to make a stand." The other Corvani nodded. The math was clear. The logic was undeniable. Vex Thrall said nothing. But something burned in his chest. Then the human fleet arrived. 30 ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They were smaller than the Corvani vessels, less armed, less armored. But they came without hesitation. Captain Morrison's voice came over the Coalition channel. "Coalition Command. This is the human contingent. We are ready to engage. Just point us at the problem." Admiral Thexnar responded with barely concealed frustration. "Human Commander, the projections show we will lose 70% of our forces. Corvani doctrine requires withdrawal at 40% projected losses. We cannot fight this battle." There was a pause, silence on the channel. Then Morrison spoke again. "Admiral, we have done some calculations too. If we run, the harvesters reach the inner worlds in 6 weeks. Billions of people from dozens of species. They will all die. That is regrettable, but the mathematics say we should run. I understand that." Morrison's voice was calm, steady. "But here is the thing, Admiral. We are not running." More silence. Then Morrison continued. "If we fight here, we might lose ships. We might lose people. But we save those worlds. We save those billions of lives." A pause. "Some things are worth dying for." The Corvani bridge was quiet. Vex Thrall watched his fellow officers exchange uncertain glances. They did not understand. They could not understand, but he did. "Humans are not retreating," Morrison said. "Anyone who wants to stand with us is welcome. Anyone who does not can leave. No judgment." For a long moment, nothing happened. The Coalition fleet hung in space, waiting. Then, a new voice joined the channel. "The Talani commander. Talani cruisers will stay. We stand with the humans." Another voice. "The Vorketh fleet leader. Vorketh fighters moving into formation. We fight." One by one, species committed. The Neth, the Kalori, the Broken Shields Mercenary Company. Ship after ship moved into battle position. Admiral Thexnar watched his tactical display. The Coalition fleet was no longer preparing to retreat. They were preparing to fight, because the humans were staying. "Admiral," Vex Thrall said quietly. "Permission to speak." Thexnar turned to him. "What is it?" "We should stay. The doctrine is wrong." Vex Thrall stepped forward. "I have spent 3 months with humans. I have seen what they are capable of. I have learned things about war that our empire never taught me. Such as, that sometimes survival is not the point. That some things matter more than living another day. That there is strength in standing, when every instinct tells you to run." Thexnar stared at him. "You would have us die for these soft creatures? I would have us stand with allies who would die for us." Vex Thrall met the Admiral's eyes. "The humans will not abandon us. They will not retreat when the cost grows high. They will fight until the end, no matter what. And if we all die, then we die with honor. But I do not think we will die." Vex Thrall gestured at the tactical display, at the fleet that was forming. "Look at them. The humans inspired this. They made every species brave enough to stay. That is a kind of strength our doctrine never accounted for." Admiral Thexnar was quiet for a long time. The bridge waited. Finally, he turned to his communications officer. "Signal the fleet. Corvani vessels will hold position. We fight." The battle began an hour later. It was brutal. Harvester ships swarmed the Coalition fleet like insects. They were relentless, mindless, consuming everything in their path. Ships exploded. Signals went dark. Crew members died. The humans fought like nothing Vex Thrall had ever seen. The Endurance dove into the heart of the swarm, weapons blazing. They took hit after hit and kept firing. When Captain Morrison was wounded by a direct hit to the bridge, Lieutenant Briggs took command without missing a beat. 9 hours. The battle lasted 9 hours. The human fleet took 60% casualties. They did not yield a single inch of space. When the harvesters finally broke and fled, the Coalition had won. The inner worlds were saved. Billions of lives preserved. The cost was enormous. Thousands dead from dozens of species. But they had won. In the aftermath, Vex Thrall returned to the Endurance. The ship was barely functional, held together by emergency repairs and willpower. He found Lieutenant Briggs in a corridor, directing damage control teams. Her uniform was torn and burned. Smoke streaked her face. "Lieutenant," he said. She turned. Despite everything, she managed a small smile. "Commander, glad you made it. How do you feel?" She considered the question honestly. "Terrible. We lost good people today. Friends. People I have served with for years. Yet you did not retreat. No. Even when the losses mounted. Even when the odds were against you." Briggs shrugged. "Some things are worth fighting for, Commander. Even when it hurts. Maybe, especially when it hurts." Vex Thrall was quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, he inclined his head. A gesture of respect he had never offered a human before. "I have fought in 37 campaigns," he said. "I have been called a veteran, a warrior, a hero of the Corvani Empire." He paused. "I am not certain I ever truly understood war until now." Briggs reached out and put a hand on his armored shoulder. "Welcome to the club, Commander. It is a rough one. But we look out for each other." Behind them, crew members worked to save their ship. Somewhere in the distance, the surviving harvesters regrouped. There would be more battles, more losses, more grief, but the humans would be there. They always would be. "Lieutenant," Vex Thrall said, "I have a request." "Name it." "When this is over, when the immediate crisis passes, I would like to remain with the human fleet. I would like to learn more." Briggs smiled, a real smile this time. "I think we would like that too, Commander. You have earned your place here." Vex Thrall looked out the viewport at the stars. He had spent his whole life fighting to survive. playing it safe. Following doctrine, the humans had taught him something different, something better. They had taught him that some things were worth more than survival, worth more than safety, worth dying for. And that was a lesson he would never forget. The Endurance limped toward the nearest repair station, its hull scarred but unbroken. Just like its crew, just like humanity itself, they would rebuild, they would recover, they would keep going, because that was what humans did. And now, Vex Thrall would do it too.